The massive dragon's breathing had become shallow, each exhale sending tremors through the crystal cavern that had been her home for over 3,000 years. Zephyria's ancient scales, once brilliant emerald, had dulled to the color of weathered copper. Her golden eyes, which had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, now held the weight of approaching mortality. The Council of Mages stood in a semicircle around her enormous form, their ornate robes rustling with nervous energy. High Magister Aldrich stepped forward, his staff glowing with protective enchantments that seemed pitifully inadequate in the presence of such ancient power. "Great Zephyria," Aldrich's voice echoed in the cavern, "we have come as you requested. What wisdom would you impart before you joined the Eternal Winds?" The dragon's massive head lifted slightly, her neck straining against the weight of millennia. When she spoke, her voice was like distant thunder, each word carrying the authority of eons. "I have one final request." She paused, drawing in a labored breath. "There is a secret I have carried since the dawn of the Second Age. A truth that could change the balance of all realms." The mages leaned forward eagerly. Ancient dragon secrets were the stuff of legend, potentially containing knowledge that could reshape magic itself. "Speak, Ancient One," urged Magister Elena, her young face bright with anticipation. "We will honor your final wish." Zephyria's eyes closed briefly, as if summoning strength from some deep reservoir. "My true name, it was given to me by one who saved my life when I was barely more than a hatchling. Only he knows it. Without that name, I cannot pass peacefully into the next realm." The mages exchanged glances. True names held immense power in their world. For a dragon, especially one as ancient as Zephyria, the true name was the key to their very essence. "Who is this person?" Aldrich asked, already preparing to send magical messengers across the known worlds. "We will find them immediately. He is..." Zephyria's voice grew softer, almost amused. "He is human." A collective gasp echoed through the cavern. Humans were known throughout the galaxy, but they were considered a young race, barely 3,000 years into their spacefaring age. The idea that a human could know the true name of an ancient dragon was almost impossible to comprehend. "A human?" Magister Elena's voice cracked slightly. "But, great Zephyria, you have lived for 30 centuries. How could a human time," Zephyria interrupted gently, "moves differently for those who truly understand its nature? Find him. His name is Marcus Thompson. He should be on the human colony world called New Terra, in what they call the Centauri sector." Aldrich's mind raced. New Terra was a modest human settlement, nothing remarkable by galactic standards. It was primarily an agricultural world with some light manufacturing. Hardly the place one would expect to find someone connected to an ancient dragon. "What does he look like? What is his station?" Aldrich pressed, trying to gather as much information as possible. Zephyria's massive form shuddered with what might have been laughter. "When last I saw him, he was humble in appearance. His station matters not. Trust in this, he will remember me, though he may use a different name." The dragon's breathing became more labored. Time was running short. "We will find this Marcus Thompson," Aldrich declared, raising his staff. "I swear by the sacred bonds of magic itself." "Wait," Zephyria's voice stopped him. "There is more you must understand. This human, he is not what he appears to be. When you meet him, show respect. Great respect. His choice to live simply does not diminish what he truly is." The cryptic warning sent chills through the assembled mages. What could an ancient dragon mean by such words about a human? As the mages prepared their fastest magical transport, Zephyria settled her great head on the cavern floor. Her breathing grew more ragged with each passing moment. Meanwhile, halfway across the galaxy, Marcus Thompson pushed his cleaning cart down the sterile corridors of the New Terra residential complex. His brown uniform was slightly wrinkled, and his graying hair stuck out at odd angles despite his attempts to comb it down. At 45, he had the weathered hands of someone who had worked hard his entire life. The night shift at the residential complex was quiet, which was exactly how Marcus preferred it. He could clean in peace, occasionally humming old Earth songs to himself as he mopped floors and emptied waste receptacles. His co-workers knew him as a reliable, if unremarkable, man who always completed his duties without complaint. Marcus paused outside apartment 47C, where Mrs. Chen often left him homemade cookies. She was 93 and one of the few residents who bothered to learn his name. Most people looked through service workers as if they were invisible. As he continued his rounds, Marcus couldn't shake an odd feeling that had been growing stronger over the past few days. It was like a distant memory trying to surface, or a name being called from very far away. He attributed it to too much caffeine and kept working. Back in the Crystal Cavern, the Council of Mages had assembled their fastest transport vessel. The journey to New Terra would take 3 days, even with their most advanced magical propulsion systems. Zephyria had perhaps 5 days left, by their estimates. "We should contact the human authorities," suggested Magister Elena as they boarded the ship. "Request their assistance in locating this Marcus Thompson." Aldrich shook his head. "Not yet. Zephyria's warning suggests this situation is more complex than it appears. We should approach carefully." As their ship launched into the star-speckled void, none of the mages could have imagined that their quarry was, at that very moment, scrubbing toilets in a residential complex, completely unaware that the fate of an ancient dragon rested in his hands. The voyage gave them time to research what little they could about New Terra and its human inhabitants. The colony had been established 200 years ago by Earth refugees seeking a simpler life. It had grown into a peaceful agricultural community of about 500,000 people. Nothing in their databases suggested any connection to ancient magic or dragons. "Perhaps this Marcus Thompson is a descendant of someone Zephyria once knew," suggested Magister Corvus, the eldest of their group. "Humans have relatively short lifespans. It's possible the original person has passed down knowledge through generations." Aldrich remained skeptical. Zephyria had been very specific about finding this particular human, not his descendants. There was something they were missing, some crucial piece of information that the dying dragon had not shared. On New Terra, Marcus finished his shift as dawn broke over the colony's agricultural domes. He walked home through streets lined with Earth-style houses, their gardens blooming with both terrestrial and native plants. The sight always made him smile. Humans had a remarkable ability to make any place feel like home. His small apartment was tidy but sparse. A few books, some old photographs, and a single, unusual item that most people would overlook: a small, perfectly carved dragon figurine made from some unknown crystalline material. It sat on his windowsill, catching the morning light. Marcus had owned the figurine for as long as he could remember, though he couldn't recall where he had gotten it. Sometimes, when he looked at it, he felt that same distant stirring of memory, as if the little dragon was trying to tell him something important. As he settled into his worn armchair with a cup of coffee, Marcus noticed that the feeling was stronger today. The figurine seemed almost warm to the touch, and, for just a moment, he could have sworn he heard a voice, ancient, powerful, and achingly familiar, calling his name. But that was impossible. He was just a janitor on a quiet colony world, living a simple life far from anything magical or extraordinary. At least, that's what he told himself as he drifted off to sleep, the dragon figurine glowing faintly in the morning sun. 3 star systems away, the Council ship continued its urgent journey, carrying mages who believed they were on a simple mission to help a dying dragon find peace. They had no idea they were about to encounter something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about humans, magic, and the true nature of power itself. The universe, it seemed, still had secrets to reveal. The Council ship emerged from hyperspace near New Terra with a brilliant flash that briefly outshone the system's star. The magical vessel, shaped like an enormous crystalline bird, drew immediate attention from the colony's modest defense grid. "Unknown vessel, this is New Terra Traffic Control," came a calm voice over the communication channels. "Please identify yourself and state your business." High Magister Aldrich stepped forward to the communication crystal. "This is the Council of Mages vessel Starwind. We are on urgent diplomatic business and request permission to land." There was a pause. New Terra rarely received visitors of such obvious importance. The ship's magical aura was visible even to their basic sensors. "Starwind, you are cleared for landing at Port 7. Please be aware that we have limited facilities for vessels of your unique design." As their ship descended toward the colony's simple spaceport, the mages got their first real look at New Terra. The world was indeed modest, rolling green hills dotted with agricultural domes, small cities that looked more like overgrown villages, and an overall sense of peaceful simplicity that was almost jarring after the grand magical academies they were used to. "Hard to believe someone connected to ancient Zephyria would choose to live here," muttered Magister Elena, watching farmers tend to their fields with primitive-looking machinery. "Remember Zephyria's warning," Aldrich cautioned. "We must not judge by appearances." Meanwhile, Marcus Thompson was dealing with a crisis of his own. The dragon figurine on his windowsill had begun to glow more brightly with each passing hour. What had started as a faint glimmer was now a steady, pulsing light that he couldn't ignore. More disturbing were the dreams. For the past 3 nights, he'd been having vivid visions of vast caverns, ancient magic, and a voice calling to him in a language he somehow understood despite never having learned it. The voice was always the same, powerful, ancient, and desperately sad. Marcus sat at his kitchen table, staring at the glowing figurine over his morning coffee. His hands shook slightly as he reached for it, and, the moment his fingers made contact, the world around him seemed to shimmer and fade. Suddenly, he was standing in a place that existed between dreams and memory, a vast library with shelves that stretched beyond sight, filled with books written in languages that predated human civilization. In the center of the space stood a figure he recognized but had tried for years to forget. She was tall and elegant, with skin that held a faint green luminescence and eyes that contained the wisdom of ages. Her long, silver-green hair moved as if underwater, and, when she spoke, her voice carried the same power as the one in his dreams. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her form flickering like a reflection in disturbed water. "It has been a very long time." Marcus felt his carefully maintained mundane life cracking around him. "Zephyria?" The name came from his lips without conscious thought. "You remember." Her smile was sad but relieved. "I was not certain you would. You have hidden so well, even from yourself." The vision began to fade as someone knocked loudly on Marcus's apartment door. He jerked back to reality, the figurine cool and dim in his hands once again. But the memory remained, crystal clear for the first time in decades. At his door stood a young woman in an official New Terra uniform, looking nervous and excited. "Mr. Thompson? My name is Sarah Kim from the Colonial Administration Office. There are some very important people here asking to speak with you. They've come from, well, very far away." Marcus glanced at his reflection in the hallway mirror. He looked exactly like what he was, a middle-aged janitor in a wrinkled uniform. But, beneath that carefully constructed exterior, something ancient was stirring. "What do they want with me?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew. "They wouldn't say, sir." "But, they mentioned it was about someone named Zephyria?" Marcus closed his eyes briefly. After all these years of peaceful anonymity, the past had finally caught up with him. "Tell them I'll meet them at the Port Authority building in 1 hour," he said quietly. As Sarah left, Marcus moved through his small apartment with new purpose. From a hidden panel behind his closet, he retrieved items that hadn't seen daylight in decades: a simple silver amulet, a worn leather journal written in symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly, and a photograph that showed him standing next to a dragon hatchling in what appeared to be the same crystal cavern where Zephyria now lay dying. In the photograph, Marcus looked exactly the same as he did now. The picture was dated 3,000 years ago. At the Port Authority building, the Council of Mages waited in the modest conference room, feeling distinctly out of place. Their elaborate robes and magical implements seemed almost comical in the simple, functional space with its plastic chairs and fluorescent lighting. "Are you certain this is the right place?" whispered Magister Elena. "This entire world seems so ordinary." Before Aldrich could respond, the door opened and Marcus Thompson walked in. He moved with quiet confidence, his janitor's uniform somehow managing to look dignified rather than menial. What struck the mages immediately was his eyes. They held depths that seemed impossible for a simple human worker. "You're looking for Marcus Thompson," he said, taking a seat across from them. "That would be me." Aldrich leaned forward, studying the human carefully. There was something about him that didn't quite fit, like a puzzle piece that looked simple but hid complex patterns beneath. "Mr. Thompson, we come from the great dragon Zephyria. She is dying, and she has made a final request. She says you know her true name." Marcus was silent for a long moment, his fingers obsessively touching the silver amulet now visible at his throat. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made the mages suddenly sit straighter. "How long does she have?" "Perhaps 2 days," Aldrich replied. "The journey back will take nearly 3, even at our fastest speed." Marcus nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already knew. "She's cutting it close, even for her." The casual familiarity in his tone sent chills through the assembled mages. This was no descendant carrying down a family story. This man spoke as if he had personal, recent knowledge of an ancient dragon. "Mr. Thompson," Magister Elena interrupted, "forgive me, but our records show that Zephyria has lived for 3,000 years." How could you possibly? Your records, Marcus said gently, don't tell you everything about anyone, do they? They probably list me as a 45-year-old janitor, born on Earth Colony 7, unremarkable in every way. He stood up, and, suddenly, the simple conference room felt too small to contain him. There was an aura around him now, subtle but unmistakable, that spoke of vast knowledge carefully hidden. What they don't tell you is that I've been a janitor, a farmer, a teacher, a soldier, a healer, and a dozen other things. I've lived quietly on the edges of 100 worlds, helping where I could, learning what I needed to learn. The mages stared in growing amazement and confusion. I've been cleaning these halls for 15 years because it's honest work, and because sometimes the most important conversations happen when people think no one significant is listening. But mainly because I was waiting. Waiting for what? Aldrich's voice was barely a whisper. Marcus smiled, and, for just a moment, his human appearance flickered, showing something vast and ancient and powerful beneath. Waiting for someone to need me badly enough that it was worth revealing what I really am. He moved to the window, looking out at the simple colony world he had called home. Zephyria saved my life once, when I was young and foolish and thought I could solve every problem with power alone. She taught me that true strength often lies in choosing when not to use the abilities you possess. The room fell completely silent. Outside, the sounds of everyday life continued, children playing, hover trucks delivering goods, the normal rhythm of a peaceful world. Her true name, Marcus continued, is Zephyria and Melithkandarinthala. It means she who bridges the storm between earth and sky. I gave her that name on her hatching day, 3,047 years ago. He turned back to the stunned mages, his eyes now clearly showing the depth of millennia. My real name, is Marcus Aurelius Thompson Varsindanor. And I think it's time we had a conversation about why an ancient dragon would choose to spend her final days testing whether the Council of Mages could find one human in a galaxy of billions. The mages sat frozen, suddenly, understanding that their simple mission had become something far more complex and significant than they had ever imagined. Outside the window, New Terra's sun continued its arc across the sky, but, inside the modest conference room, the very foundations of their understanding about humans, dragons, and the nature of power itself had just shifted dramatically. The silence in the conference room stretched for nearly a full minute as the mages processed what they had just heard. High Magister Aldrich was the first to recover, though his voice trembled slightly when he spoke. You're saying that you named Zephyria? That you were present at her hatching? Marcus nodded, settling back into his chair with the ease of someone who had finally stopped pretending to be less than he was. I was young then. Barely 200 years old, which for my kind is practically an infant. Your kind? Magister Elena's eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. We don't have a name that translates well into galactic standard. Your people might call us ancients or first ones, though both terms are somewhat inaccurate. We simply are what we are, beings who chose to remain when others of our generation moved beyond this reality. Marcus stood and walked to a wall display showing a map of the local stellar region. With a casual gesture, the display changed to show star charts that went back millions of years, tracking the movements of civilizations long forgotten. Most of my contemporaries grew tired of physical existence eons ago. They transcended, moved to higher planes, became one with cosmic forces, whatever you want to call it. A few of us chose to stay, to watch over the younger races as they developed. He pointed to a cluster of stars near the galactic core. That's where I was born, back when those suns were young and the galaxy looked very different. I've watched species rise from primitive hunters to spacefaring civilizations. I've seen empires span thousands of worlds, then crumble to dust. And I've learned that the most important moments often happen in the quietest places. Magister Corvus, who had remained silent until now, leaned forward. If you are truly what you claim to be, why reveal yourself now? Why live as a janitor? Marcus laughed, a sound that somehow contained the warmth of summer rain and the wisdom of ancient forests. Because janitors see everything and are noticed by no one. Do you know how much I've learned about humanity by cleaning their homes and offices? People speak freely around service workers. They reveal their hopes, fears, and dreams to those they consider beneath their notice. He gestured toward the window, where New Terra's citizens went about their daily lives. These humans fascinate me. They're so young as a species, yet they possess something extraordinary: an ability to adapt, to hope, to rebuild after devastating losses. Most races either become stagnant after achieving spaceflight or destroy themselves within a few generations. Humans just keep evolving. The dragon figurine that Marcus had brought with him began to pulse with soft light. He touched it gently, and, suddenly, the room filled with Zephyria's voice, weak but unmistakable. "Marcus, old friend. I felt you finally. Drop your shields." "Hello, little flame," Marcus replied, his voice infinitely gentle. "You're being dramatic again, I see. Calling in the entire council just to get my attention." Even through the magical connection, they could hear the dragon's amused exhaustion. "You've been hiding among the humans so long, I wasn't sure you remembered who you are." "I never forgot. I just found something worth studying up close." The mages watched in amazement as the conversation continued. This was no formal interaction between different species, this was clearly a discussion between old friends who had known each other for millennia. The humans, Zephyria's voice grew serious. "Tell me about them, Marcus. Are they ready?" "Ready for what?" Aldrich interrupted, unable to contain his curiosity. Marcus and Zephyria fell silent for a moment, and the mages could sense some kind of wordless communication passing between them. "The test," Marcus finally said. "Every species faces it eventually, a moment when their fundamental character is revealed under ultimate pressure. Most fail, either through fear, aggression, or simple selfishness." He walked to the window again, his expression thoughtful. "Humans are approaching that moment. Their expansion into space, their encounters with other species, their growing technological capabilities, it's all leading to a crossroads." "What kind of test?" Magister Elena asked, though she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to know the answer. "The kind that determines whether a species becomes a positive force in the galaxy or a threat that must be contained," Zephyria's voice replied through the figurine. "Marcus has been observing them, learning their true nature beyond their public face." Marcus turned back to the mages, his expression now carrying the weight of cosmic responsibility. "I've lived among them for over a century now, in dozens of different roles on dozens of different worlds. I've seen them at their best and worst, in times of peace and crisis." "And your conclusion?" Aldrich asked quietly. "They're remarkable," Marcus said without hesitation. "Flawed, certainly. They can be petty, violent, and short-sighted. But they have something most advanced species lose, genuine empathy that extends beyond their own kind." He activated the wall display again, showing images from various human colonies. "I've watched human families adopt abandoned alien children. I've seen human scientists sacrifice their careers to protect endangered species on newly discovered worlds. I've observed human soldiers risk their lives to save enemy combatants." The images shifted to show humans working alongside various alien species in peaceful cooperation. "Most importantly, they don't try to impose their way of life on others. They adapt, they learn, they find ways to coexist." "But surely they have negative traits as well?" Magister Corvus pressed. "Of course," Marcus acknowledged. "They struggle with tribalism, they sometimes make decisions based on emotion rather than logic, and they have a tendency to bite off more than they can chew. But these flaws are young flaws. The kind that can be outgrown with time and wisdom." Zephyria's voice carried a note of satisfaction. "So you recommend them?" "I do," Marcus said firmly. "With guidance and patience, humans could become one of the great stabilizing forces in this galaxy. They have the perfect combination of technological advancement and moral flexibility." The mages exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand that they were witnessing something far more significant than a dying dragon's last wish. "The Council of Ancients has been watching," Zephyria explained. "Not just humans, but all the younger races. Decisions are being made about which species receive advanced knowledge and which are left to develop naturally." Marcus nodded. "Humans are on the borderline. They could go either way, depending on what influences they encounter in the next few centuries." "And that's where you come in," Aldrich said, pieces of the puzzle finally clicking into place. "Not just me," Marcus corrected. "All of us who chose to remain in physical form. We're the guardians, the subtle guides, the helping hands that appear when young species face crucial moments." He smiled at the mage's expressions. "Did you think it was coincidence that brought you to me?" Zephyria could have told you her true name herself. This entire exercise was designed to reveal something important, that even among your advanced magical society, you had never truly looked at the humans around you. The weight of realization settled over the room. These mages, despite their power and knowledge, had dismissed an entire species as unremarkable simply because they appeared ordinary. The janitor you ignored could reshape the fundamental structure of reality, Marcus continued gently. The farmer tending his crops might be a master of sciences you haven't even discovered yet. The teacher reading stories to children could be nurturing the minds that will solve your civilization's greatest challenges. Through the figurine, Zephyria's breathing was becoming more labored, but her voice remained strong. This is my gift to both our peoples, a bridge of understanding. Marcus will return with you to speak my name and ease my passing. But, more importantly, he will begin working openly to ensure that humans receive the guidance they need. Marcus picked up the glowing figurine, cradling it carefully. We should go. Even for a dragon, time has its limits. As the mages prepared for the journey back, each was lost in thought about everything they had learned. Their simple mission had become a revelation about the hidden depths that existed in the most unlikely places. But, perhaps most profound was the realization that Marcus, ancient, powerful, and wise beyond their comprehension, had chosen to spend decades cleaning floors and emptying trash bins, not out of necessity or punishment, but because he genuinely believed that was where he could learn the most important lessons about the nature of growing civilizations. The universe, it seemed, had an appreciation for irony that exceeded even their magical understanding. The return journey to Zephyria's crystal cavern took place in a profound silence that had nothing to do with the ship's magical propulsion system. The Council of Mages found themselves completely re-evaluating everything they thought they knew about the galaxy and their place in it. Marcus sat quietly in the observation deck, still wearing his janitor's uniform, the dragon figurine resting in his palms. Through it, he maintained a constant, gentle connection with Zephyria, monitoring her weakening life force and offering what comfort he could across the vast distance. She's fading faster than I hoped, he said softly to High Magister Aldrich, who had joined him. The effort of maintaining this connection is draining her remaining strength. Aldrich studied the being he had initially mistaken for a simple human worker. Even now, knowing what Marcus truly was, the illusion was nearly perfect. Only his eyes gave away the vast depth of experience behind them. May I ask you something? Aldrich ventured. Marcus nodded without looking up from the figurine. When you first took human form, was it difficult? To limit yourself so drastically? A smile played at the corners of Marcus's mouth. You're assuming I'm limiting myself. What if I told you that learning to truly understand and connect with other beings was actually an expansion of my abilities, not a restriction? The question hung in the air as Aldrich considered it. In magical theory, greater power always meant greater isolation from lesser beings. Yet here was someone of virtually unlimited capability who had chosen the opposite path. Most of my kind couldn't comprehend that choice, Marcus continued. They saw physical existence as a crude limitation, emotions as primitive weaknesses, the need to eat and sleep and work as beneath their transcended state. He lifted the figurine slightly, watching the light pulse within it. But they missed something crucial. Growth doesn't stop when you achieve ultimate power. In fact, that's often when the most important learning begins. Through the ship's viewing portal, the crystal cavern's star system was becoming visible. They would arrive within hours. I spent my first million years focused on accumulating knowledge and power, Marcus explained. I could manipulate matter at the quantum level, bend spacetime, create life itself if I chose. But I was essentially alone, surrounded by the vast cosmos yet connected to nothing within it. Magister Elena, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. What changed? I encountered my first truly dying civilization, Marcus replied. A species called the Veltar. They had achieved everything they thought they wanted: immortality, unlimited energy, perfect harmony. And they were slowly going extinct from sheer boredom. He activated a small holographic display, showing images of elegant crystalline beings in a world of impossible beauty and absolute sterility. They had eliminated every challenge, every struggle, every opportunity for growth or change. They were perfect, powerful, and completely empty. Watching them fade away taught me that connection, challenge, and even suffering serve essential purposes. The ship began its approach to Zephyria's world, and Marcus carefully placed the figurine in a protective case. That's when I decided to live among younger species, to experience existence from their perspective. And humans were your first choice? Aldrich asked. Hardly, Marcus laughed. I spent time with dozens of species first. The crystal and Zelnikari taught me about the beauty of temporary existence. The gasping whisper folk showed me how to find meaning in constant change. The Hivemind Collective demonstrated the strength that comes from genuine unity of purpose. The ship settled onto the crystal plateau outside Zephyria's cavern with barely a whisper of sound. Through the cavern entrance, they could see the dragon's massive form, noticeably dimmer than when they had left. But, humans, Marcus continued as they disembarked, humans taught me something none of the others could. Which was? Elena pressed. How to find hope in hopeless situations. They entered the cavern to find Zephyria's breathing extremely shallow. Her once brilliant scales had dulled to a pale gray, and her enormous eyes were barely open. Marcus, her voice was the faintest whisper. "I'm here, little flame," he replied, kneeling beside her massive head. "I brought friends." The Council of Mages watched in amazement as Marcus began to glow with soft, golden light. The illumination wasn't dramatic or overwhelming, it was gentle, warm, and infinitely comforting. "Tell me," Zephyria whispered, "about the humans." "One last story before I go." Marcus smiled, his hand resting on her enormous snout. There was a colony ship that lost all its navigation systems during a solar storm. 200 families drifting in space, fuel running low, no idea which direction led to safety. His voice took on the cadence of a master storyteller. They could have rationed resources and waited for rescue. They could have put themselves in stasis and hoped for the best. Instead, they chose to use their remaining fuel to search for other ships in distress. Zephyria's eyes brightened slightly. They helped others while they themselves needed help? They found 3 ships in worse condition than their own. Used their food to feed starving refugees. Shared their water with people they'd never met. By the time rescue arrived, they were in critical condition themselves. And every single person they saved went on to accomplish something remarkable. The children they fed grew up to become scientists who developed new medical treatments. The engineers they rescued designed better safety systems for colony ships. The teachers they helped went on to educate thousands. Marcus's glow intensified slightly, and Zephyria's breathing grew easier. The original colonists never knew the full impact of their choice. They just saw people who needed help and decided that was more important than their own safety. "That is very human," Zephyria murmured, a note of affection in her voice. "Yes," Marcus agreed. "They don't help others because they're perfect or because they have everything they need. They help because they understand, instinctively, that everyone's welfare is connected." The dragon's eyes closed briefly, then opened again with renewed clarity. "I'm ready now. Speak my name, old friend." Marcus stood, and, for the first time since the mages had met him, he allowed his true form to become visible. He didn't change physically, but, suddenly, the cavern felt impossibly vast, filled with presence that extended beyond the boundaries of normal reality. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that resonated through dimensions the mages couldn't even perceive. "Zephyria and Melithkandaranthala, she who bridges the storm between earth and sky, beloved daughter of wind and flame, guardian of the sacred mysteries, keeper of the ancient compact." The dragon's form began to shimmer with silver light. "I have been known," she said, her voice growing stronger even as her physical form began to fade. "I have been loved. I have served with purpose and I pass with peace." "Go well, little flame," Marcus whispered. "The winds will carry your wisdom forward." Zephyria's massive form dissolved into particles of pure light that swirled upward and outward, eventually disappearing beyond the cavern's crystal ceiling. The space she had occupied for 3 millennia now held only the echo of ancient wisdom and profound peace. The mages stood in reverent silence as Marcus gradually allowed his appearance to return to that of a simple janitor from New Terra. "Will you return to cleaning floors now?" Aldrich asked quietly. Marcus nodded. "For a while. There's still much to learn, and the humans are entering a crucial phase of their development. They'll need subtle guidance to navigate the challenges ahead." "What kind of challenges?" "First contact with truly alien minds. Decisions about sharing advanced technology. Questions about their role in galactic politics." Marcus smiled. The usual growing pains of a young species ready to take its place among the stars. As they prepared to leave the now empty cavern, Magister Elena asked the question that had been haunting her since their first conversation. "How many of you are there? How many ancients are living among us in disguise?" Marcus paused at the cavern entrance, looking back at the space where his old friend had spent her final years. More than you might think, fewer than you might hope. We're the janitors and teachers, the farmers and artists, the healers and storytellers. We're wherever we're needed most, doing whatever work serves the greater good. He turned to face the mages directly. And, now that you know we exist, you have a choice to make. Will you use this knowledge to seek us out, to try to exploit our presence for political advantage? Or will you simply do better, look deeper, judge less quickly, and remember that the most extraordinary things often wear the most ordinary faces? The Council of Mages exchanged glances, each understanding that they had been given a responsibility as much as a revelation. As they boarded their ship for the journey home, Marcus settled back into the observation deck with a battered paperback book, a human romance novel that he read with genuine enjoyment. The mages watched in continued amazement as someone capable of reshaping reality chose to spend his time absorbed in a simple story about ordinary people falling in love. The universe, High Magister Aldrich murmured to himself, is far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. Through the ship's communications system, they began receiving reports from across the galaxy, other councils, other species, all suddenly paying new attention to the humans in their midst. Word of the revelation was spreading, carried by those who understood its significance. And, on dozens of worlds, beings of immense power continued their quiet work as shopkeepers and mechanics, nurses and librarians, choosing service over dominion and finding in that choice a form of strength that transcended anything they had known in their earlier, more isolated existence. The test was over. The bridges were being built. And, in the vast tapestry of galactic civilization, humanity had found its place not through conquest or perfect achievement, but through the simple radical act of caring about others as much as themselves. It was, as Zephyria would have said, very human indeed.